the 4x4 Podcast, episode 131.
You're listening to the 4x4 Podcast, the podcast all about four-wheeling, overlanding, off-road racing, and the outdoor lifestyle. We talk about news, tips and tricks, answer your questions, and interview big and little names in the off-roading world. So whether your rig is busted and you're in the shop wrenching on it, or you're on your way to the trail, join us and we'll keep you plugged in on topics to help you get away. Here are your hosts, Dan, Craig, and Rich.
Well, hello, welcome back for another episode of the 4x4 Podcast. I feel like we should go ahead and reintroduce ourselves because we kind of pod-faded for a while there during a busy time in life and transitions and blah, 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 lots of excuses. Anyways, I am Dan, your host of the 4x4 Podcast, and we also have Craig. How you doing, Craig?
I'm doing all right.
And Rich, how are you?
Awesome as always.
So there's been numerous changes since the last time we sat down and recorded. I am no longer recording in Alaska, sadly. However, for this season of life, I am down in Southern California, which turns out like off-roading mecca. There's tons of stuff and places to go off-roading down here. And Craig, you are in Northern California, right?
Yep. I'm about 8 hours away from you.
Yeah.
Or, no, I'm probably about 6.
Yeah, I'll have to actually get on Google Maps. We'll find out so we can actually go hit some trails together. And Craig, is your Jeep running yet?
Let's not go there.
Okay, we won't pick at that scab.
Life's happened again, you know?
Yeah. All right. And
but
Rich,
the transmission is apart, and it is laying on the table.
Okay. Maybe you should lay it out on the kitchen table and get some motivation to really get things going.
No, my wife would kill me. That table's too nice.
Yeah, I can see that. And Rich, you are still located in Kansas?
I am. However, my recording studio has moved from the living room to my wife's lovely craft room. But at least it's quieter in here. So.
Hey, that's good. That's good. So one of the interesting things about me moving here to Southern California is that my schedule is way more predictable than I've ever experienced ever before in my entire life. So I don't even want to say that we're going to get back to recording more frequently, but I feel like that should be said. And if we don't, please send us hate mail. It's a good motivator.
I feel like we've said it before, too, though. So
I know it. And we do occasionally get hate mail. Why are there not more shows? And so that's it. But we really didn't have a whole lot planned for this episode. Didn't have any interviews recorded, just because we're going to share a little bit. I know, Rich, you've been on some trips or have trips planned. I drove from Alaska down to Southern California by way of Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, through Colorado and Moab. And so that's kind of a long story in itself. But first, Rich, I'll let you start it off. What all you been up to traveling around?
Oh, not
Changing
much.
vehicles again yet?
No, the 1 year stint with the Toyota Tacoma. Nope, I'm still in the Revel. We drove it out to New Mexico and Arizona. Did some camping, some light off-roading out there, and then we always wind up in Utah somehow. That's our go-to state. We always have fun in Utah. But
yeah, I can now say, having spent a little bit of time in Utah, I can't blame you for trying to get there. Tons of stuff to do, places to see, and it's so many unique landscapes.
It is. You got a little bit of everything.
Yeah. So, tell me a little more about your trip.
Well, the trip didn't wind up. It was one of those trips where you just regret taking the trip when you're done. Like the whole family's like, was that really a vacation?
Oh, man.
We had fun. It just was one of those trips where the mojo wasn't there, But no, I think the kids are up to, 32 or 33 states. They have a goal of hitting all lower 48 by the time they graduate high school. So
That's
maybe they'll make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a kind of a similar goal, except it's for national parks. And
yeah.
We hit a bunch.
Yeah. So the biggest problem we had with our trip really was all the fires. The fires really put a hamper on what we were trying to do and where we wanted to go, because every park we turned into was closed.
Oh, really? That's crazy. Which ones
Yeah,
were closed when you came through?
pretty much everything. everything around the everything around the Sedona Flagstaff area at that time was pretty much closed. I mean, if you got in there and started talking to the locals, you could start finding some spots, and we did find some nice camp spots and out of the way places, but it definitely added to the frustration of the trip. So
No kidding. So were these places that you like arrived at and then discovered that, hey, they're closed?
well, yeah. So we hit New Mexico. Then I get on Facebook and I start hearing reports of people in the areas we're going to saying all these parks are closed and this area is closed, and so I started doing more investigation. This is where I learned rule number one: I don't care where you're going on your vacation, take a laptop.
Oh, yeah.
Because we had our phones, but doing that research on your phone was such a pain. We actually broke down and we started looking at it, and we almost went and bought an iPad just for my wife, just to make it easier to find all that information. But that would have really helped in the research.
Yeah.
But no, but ultimately what happened is you just go in there, you start talking to the people that live there. They know what's going on, and they can give you the nice spots that are hidden and out of the way and are still accessible.
Yeah. So did you have those conversations in person, or were they hit up random Facebook groups?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we decided we're still going to go, so we went ahead. We drove out there, and once we got there, we just hit some of the spots that some of the camping stores and mountain bike stores, and just started talking to people.
Yeah. The equivalent version of going into a fly shop to find out where the good fishing spots are.
Exactly. It works for camping too.
Yeah. Yeah, I've tried that before as well, and that's one of the benefits of the ham radio is that a lot of the people in the ham radio community are of similar mindsets, so I can jump on a local repeater somewhere I'm going and find out a lot of great information, stuff that would be hard to find just by, Googling a forum or trying to look up Yelp reviews or something like that.
Yeah. We wound up in a tiny town in Utah called Kanab. I don't know if I'm saying it right. Awesome.
I'm not going to correct
you. It was a really, really fun little town. And then we wound up at the I believe it's called Pink Sand Dune State Park.
What made Kanab a good spot? Was it, cool town center or just a unique vibe?
It's just got a good vibe. It just seems like one of those up and coming type of towns. Our goal was to get to St. George. So, and a friend of mine from work a week prior had told us about Kanab, and I completely forgot about it. And then we wind up in Kanab. I'm going, wait a minute, I think this is that place he was telling me about.
That's
It
funny.
was.
I'll have to look up on Google Maps here sometime and find out where that's at in relation to St. George. St. George is one of the towns we did roll through from Colorado on our way here to Southern California by way of Moab.
So that was the previous trip. Now I've got an upcoming trip coming up in October with a friend of mine, Brandon from Berserker Off-Road on his YouTube channel. I think we're going to do the Colorado backcountry discovery route.
That's a good one.
So, yeah, we may not do the whole thing. I don't think we're going to start all the way down in Four Corners. We'll probably start somewhere around Telluride or Ouray, and then just head north from there.
Nice. So I've looked at some of the Berserker videos on YouTube before, but don't they make some pretty good armor and stuff as well?
No, Berserker.
Oh, it's a community.
He does. No, Berserker just does product reviews and trip videos.
I was thinking of something else then. Well, we'll put a link in the show notes for Berserkers YouTube page.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, so, and you did that trip in your Ram Rebel?
Both of them are going to be in the Rebel, yeah.
Okay. Did you have any moments of epiphany where you get to know the truck a little better?
No, hopefully I don't. I'm trying to avoid that. Hopefully my stupid stunt days are over.
Yeah.
And I will with a little more common sense.
Yeah.
Make sure you bring a strap and a come along, just in case.
I think, aren't
Always.
you past the strap and come along days? I thought you added a winch in there.
On the Rebel? No.
Okay. Well, then that's still coming.
Yeah. No, Brandon's got a winch on his Jeep, and so we'll be good for that.
Has he got a JK?
He has a JK, yeah. I think
It's
I
funny.
think his is a 2015.
Okay. How much does I wonder what the weight difference is between the 1500 and the JK. I can't imagine it's too much at this point.
Well, yeah, especially, I mean, my Rebel stock, his JK's armored and lifted, so they're probably pretty close.
Got to be getting pretty close.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, so my trip started in Alaska, and right before I started, had the trailer all put together and realized that the fridge was not staying charged when it's unplugged. So I had an issue with the battery. So I went ahead and swapped out the main battery, and I had an extra battery laying around, which was also having an issue. So I warranted it out as well. So I had two brand new batteries that were the same. They were different make and model of batteries, but they were the same cold cranking amps and everything. So I just wired them in. Let me get this right. In series, no. Whichever one it was to expand the capacity but remain 12 volts. I always get it messed up. So that way I could leave the trailer unplugged for longer, and it would still keep the freezer nice and cold because I had, let's see, it was like 40 pounds of caribou breakfast sausage and summer sausages that I did not want to go bad at any point on the trip.
Sure.
And so that made the trip a little more comfortable, knowing that I'm not going to lose a bunch of really good meat and be able to take that all the way down here to California, which has been great. I've still been able to enjoy that and share that with some friends. But so our trip, in terms of the legs of it, you go out the edge of Alaska, down the Alcan, and once you reach the into the Alcan, we kind of skirted over the rest of the way into Alberta, and then we hit Jasper National Park, Banff, Lake Louise area, which all those Canadian national parks are connected by the Icefields Parkway, which is beautiful, beautiful road. Highly recommend everybody check that one out. And so then we went down, crossed the border back into the United States in Montana after passing through Calgary, and then hit the Glacier National Park. And that was the first U.S. national park of quite a few here. So after that one, I feel like I'm forgetting one in Montana, but we went over to North Dakota to hit the only national park in North Dakota, and thankfully it's just inside the border because there's really not a lot going on in North Dakota, turns out. Did the Theodore Roosevelt National Park, and then came down to South Dakota, which has lots going on. I had no idea what I've been missing out my entire life in South Dakota.
South Dakota is an awesome state.
It
really is.
I'm definitely leaving that one on my list to go back to.
I've had more fun wheeling in South Dakota than any other state I've been to.
And that's saying a lot after talking Colorado and Utah and Arizona. So we got the Black Hills there. Lots of amazing stuff. But we did the Badlands National Park. Went and saw Mount Rushmore, which is not a national park, but it's a national monument. What else? There's Cave Winds National Park. No,
Yeah.
Wind Cave. Cave of the Winds is in Colorado. Wind Cave is in South Dakota. And there's another national park that we went to. Anyways, we racked up 8 national parks, so let's just get that out of the way on this trip. 8 of them. But from South Dakota, let's see, I should really be looking at a map. And while I'm looking up the map, I can explain at least that halfway through the trip when we got to Colorado and visited my dad, we took a break, visited there, and washed sleeping bags. And while I was washing the sleeping bags and everything, I recorded a short episode, or it was a live Instagram live video with my oldest daughter, which was fun. It was interesting to see and hear her perspective on the trip so far. And so I ripped the audio out of that here this afternoon, and I published that as an episode. So if somebody is catching this episode and wants to hear what a trip like this sounds like, or is viewed through the eyes of a 12-year-old that's been ripped away from her friends and destroyed her life, you can listen to that. But she's got a really unique perspective on things. So, I know a lot of people that listen to the show go out and on ventures with their families. So here's some things to think about in that episode that may help shape your trips going forward. So going back, after we left the Black Hills, South Dakota, we drove through. How did we get back down to Colorado? We cut through Wyoming, and really, I don't think we did anything in Wyoming but drive straight through down to Colorado, so we can maximize time with family. But before we got to the family, we stopped in at Rocky Mountain National Park and drove the Alpine Highway, which I think takes you over the highest elevation for a highway in North America, anyways. So that was pretty cool. Haven't done that one before, shockingly, even after living in Colorado for so long. But after we finished visiting with the family in Colorado, we drove through all the way to Moab. And if you've been following along on the adventures on Instagram or Facebook, you'll see I asked for who do you recommend to rent a vehicle from in Moab, and unanimous
across the board.
Every single recommendation was for Barlow Adventures. So me being the reasonably observant person that I am, I took that advice and we rented a Jeep from the Barlow Adventures and went and cruised some of the trails, and it was smoking hot. It was like 111 as we were cruising around there. And the soft tops on Jeeps just I don't know what good they do, really. Like, the air conditioner could just not keep up with that. So really we ended up putting the windows down and just letting some air flow through, and that was cooler than everything else. So, and it was surprisingly loud. I don't think my family's ever going to complain about my Jeep Cherokee being loud. Hearing that wind whip the soft top. But we had a great time. Wow. The Jeep was phenomenal.
You should try a CJ or a YJ sometime.
Yeah, well, it's funny. So now my work truck is a Humvee with no doors and just a top that covers the front 2 seats because there are no other seats. And it's just completely wide open. And it's not that bad, even though it's a giant V8. I think it's a 6.5 liter V8 diesel with a really crappy exhaust, but it's still not that loud. But I don't drive it over 35 miles an hour because it's on dirt and unpaved anything all the time.
Yeah.
But, okay, let's go back. So after Moab, we dipped into the Canyonlands National Park as well. Let's see, there was the Canyonlands and Arches. And, the Arches are really cool. It is full of people, though. It was just crawling with tourists. So I don't think we
always packed.
I don't think we really got to enjoy it we didn't spend a lot of time going back. I mean, it would probably take a week of going back early in the morning, every morning, to avoid the crowds. And we just didn't have the time like that to commit. But going through Canyonlands, some of those trails back there, we didn't see a single person.
Yeah. Well, in Arches, there's a lot of non-paved roads that you can take to get back in there, and really gets you away from the crowds.
Yeah. Well, I wish we had more time to spend in Moab, but we just cruised around for the one day. We arrived the night of one day, spent the day jeeping around, cruising the trails, and then the next morning is when we went back to Arches because a lot of that is paved. We just didn't take the time to go explore some of those other areas.
Right.
And we were limited on where we could go because a lot of these places just are not dog friendly, and we didn't have the foresight to find a kennel for Humphrey the Adventure Beagle, so we just didn't get a chance to do that. But great experience with Barlow Adventures. Highly recommend you guys. If you're interested in flying in somewhere close and not driving your own vehicle, definitely look them up. Got a tremendous price compared to a lot of the other places out there. I was going to spend twice as much easily for a similar vehicle and type of setup. So, and the staff is very friendly. Nina Barlow, the kind of proprietor of it, she's moved down to Sedona, and all the Jeep rentals in the Sedona area are JLs now, but the Moab rentals are still JKs. But it was extremely well maintained. Everything worked great. It was awesome. Great experience. But leaving there, we had hoped to go to the Capitol Reef National Park, and we just I think the heat had taken some of the life out of us, so we skipped over the Capitol Reef National Park and swore that we would eventually go back there. So we'll hold true to that. Cruised down through southern Utah, through St. George, and really wished we had more time to spend there as well. The St. George area is beautiful.
St. George is nice.
Yeah. I did skip over Zion National Park. Sorry, let's back up. I'm looking at the map now so I don't forget. But Zion National Park is not a driver-friendly park, turns out. There's kind of one main road that you can drive. Otherwise, the really main tourist attraction is by shuttle only.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Well, neither did I. I wish I had known. But again, it's not something that we could have done because we had Humphrey the Adventure Beagle kind of squishing some adventures for us. And normally, on a trip, like a vacation, we won't take our dog. But since we're moving, everybody's all in. No choices. And so after that, we were hoping to go to the Grand Canyon, but we opted to skip the Grand Canyon because now that's kind of a weekend trip distance for us, and that was going to take us a long ways out of the way. And again, we were starting to get antsy after being on the road for 3 weeks at this point. We just kind of wanted to arrive. So we spent a night in Las Vegas camping, probably the hottest night of camping I've ever experienced, just because there was no wind. Like here, for work, I'm out in the desert in the heat of it. But at night, it gets fairly breezy and cools off nicely. But Vegas, all the pavement in there and just lack of wind, miserable. But now here I am at the edge of the Mojave National Preserve in the Mojave Desert, and that's where we're now living and working and playing and doing all kinds of things. So,
yeah, you're not going to have any shortage of things to do out there. No. So
the very first weekend we were here, we went and checked out the Sierra LED 250, a night race. The race took place basically. We went, checked out the starting line. They all left, went, grabbed dinner, went back, checked some of the night festivities, watched all the headlights bouncing across the Stoddard Wells OHV area where the race was taking place, and then rolled home. And it took 30 minutes to get there, 30 minutes to get back, 30-ish minutes. But where we actually live is very isolated, in the nice gated community down Fort Irwin Road. So it's a 31-mile stretch of pavement before you get to the highway, and then a couple more miles before you get to the town. So,
Okay.
well isolated, but between the front gate of our gated community and Barstow, the nearest kind of major city, is the Calico Mountains, Calico Hills. There's a ghost town and just tons and tons of trails. So I cannot wait to really go back and spend a lot of time there exploring. There's just so much out there, a wide variety of terrain. It's beautiful. It's also going to be way more beautiful when it's not 110 outside.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I should have mentioned that's one of the spots we did go visit the Grand Canyon while we were there, which I've actually never been to, so it was kind of nice. But we got an awesome camping spot near. I wanted to camp at Crazy Jug. We get there, of course, there's somebody already there. But so we just kind of headed out and just drove around a little bit, and we found a. I wouldn't call it as nice as Crazy Jug, but it was a close second.
Yeah. What is Crazy Jug? I don't think I'm familiar with that.
It's just an overlook on the north rim, where you were basically just camping right on the rim of the Grand Canyon.
Okay.
So we found another spot not too far away from there that was also on the rim. Just the views weren't as nice, but still awesome camping spot.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw some of the pictures, and it looked like it required some off-roading to get there.
It did. It did. I mean, honestly, I could have done it in the Subaru, but
yeah. Sometimes that's all it takes
great.
to discourage other folks from getting there, but
true.
not always. So I've started using some other apps to find some cool camping spots.
Yeah.
I don't know if we've talked about it. One of the apps that I used was the iOverlander. I had to look up the app here on my phone.
Yep.
Have you used that one before?
I use iOverlander quite a bit.
Nice. So
Yeah.
describe it for our friends here.
So it's basically a group collaboration,
Like a wiki.
kind of like a wiki for overlanding and camp spots. You can download this app and go to the area you're looking for, and it's going to give you all kinds of little icons of places where people have camped. And then they can also give you updates of, whether or not it's closed or not, what you can expect, what the amenities are, the pros, the cons, just about anything. And it'll range from, I want to take my RV there, to I want to take my mountain bike in a tent. So it covers everything.
Yeah, and what I found is it even includes like gas stations and repair shops and things like that. Other useful information while you're road tripping around. Not all is aimed at off-roading, but if you're just looking for a spot to camp, you can kind of find where some dispersed camping is in a national forest or something like that. That's what we use it for.
Yeah, it tells you about what wilderness areas are around, and it's an awesome resource.
Oh yeah. So iOverlander, we will put a link to that in the show notes as well. And the other app that I really used a lot, at least while we were in Moab, was the Backcountry Navigator Pro. And I think we've mentioned this one on the podcast before, because they've got a pretty good partnership, or FunTracks has a partnership with them. And the FunTracks are, of course, the guidebooks that have. It's a tremendous resource for a couple different states. Moab and Utah being one of them. I think they've got at least two different books for California, just because California is such a large state with tremendous off-roading in the northern half and the southern half. I think there's one for New Mexico. Maybe they're still working on that one. But they've got one for Colorado as well. But Backcountry Navigator it allows you to import the GPX tracks, the GPS files on there, and see the routes When paired with the book series, it shows some interesting facts and a lot more detail about the trail and in that rating system, which is really great. So you kind of know what it is that you're getting into before you get there. And they're very descriptive on how the trails are rated. So you can gauge if this trail or a trail is going to be out of reach or out of your capability. So have you tried that one before?
I have not used that one, no.
Yeah, so the Funtreks has been around for quite some time, and they've gone through some different apps as they open and close, and I don't know. They're trying to stay relevant with the apps that people are using because they're the most supported, and that's been a really good one. So let's see. Really didn't do any geocaching on this trip. I'd hoped to, but we just burned a lot of miles. I think all in, it was I think it was 7,700 miles and change. Because I know this because I did an oil change a week or two before we left, and then the first weekend I arrived, I did another oil change. So that's a lot of miles. But so back to oil changes, I guess. I use the Blackstone Labs oil analysis, and got the oil analysis of the diesel engine. I sent off the first oil change too, and the first oil change, I don't know what kind of voodoo science the Ram truck uses, but it came due at like 5,500 miles. So this one, it came due. It was not quite due. I was down to like 1 or 2%. So let's see. I'm pulling up the report now because the Blackstone Labs uses real people to do the analysis, and they actually do some comparison and fill it out. It's written by a real human, not just a bunch of gobbledygook numbers.
A real human who sometimes has a sense of humor.
Oh, yeah. Fortunately, there's no humor in this one, but I can read what it said on this. It says, here, 7,735 miles on the oil. And I like I said, did the oil change right before we left. This sample from the Ram made it here in pretty good, reasonable time frame, and the engine looks good on this initial report. Universal averages, blah, blah, blah. Everything's close to average. Extended idling or hard use in general can add iron, because mine was just a little bit higher on iron, but not to the problematic range. So the benefit of using the oil analysis with Blackstone Laboratories is that you can see how the averages change over time. So if you keep using the same oil and the same filter and something is dramatically different, that's a good indicator that there's something weird going on inside your engine. And then you can take that, I can take that to the dealership and say, hey, there's something going on. And even though they're going to, the oil change monkey that they're going to use is going to say, oh, no, everything's fine. And I can show them hard data. No, there's something going on I think you need to check, which gives me a little bit of peace of mind. Plus, there's just the novelty of knowing exactly what's going on. So I highly recommend that. Blackstone Laboratories. I think it's like $28 to do the analysis on it. And I do it for the Jeep as well. But the Jeep does not have its oil changed nearly as often, especially since I now work like 2 miles from the house. Not good for the oil. I haven't had to stop at the gas station in over 2 weeks. That's driving it basically every day. So.
Oh yeah, rough on gas mileage there.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think I was getting, if I would just drive it around. Actually, when I picked it up from the shipper, which that's a whole nother story we'll get to. I got about 250 miles on the tank of fuel. Now I'm at like 160, and it's almost time to fill up. So lots of start, stop, short drives. Yeah, not good.
All that time sitting there idling in the driveway, warming up, just to drive 2 miles to work.
Yeah, well, I don't even do that. And it's funny. It's mostly downhill to work. So I start it at the stop signs, and then I can just push the clutch in and let it coast till I get to the next stop sign. Oh, so I think I'll probably end up parking it and mostly bike to work. I just can't bring myself to ride my bike when it's so stinking hot. Who knew it was so hot in the Mojave? But going back to the other story, yeah, I think everybody did. This was just a harsh reality I didn't want to admit to, that leaving the interior of Alaska and coming to the Mojave Desert was going to be brutal.
Well, yeah.
Brutal.
Well, you guys are so used to that weather, of that nice cool weather, and then you're completely climatized, moving from beautiful weather to an oven.
Yeah. Oh, man. But anyway, so before I left, I was really getting worried that I wasn't going to be able to ship the XJ, because there's pretty strict standards that the shipping company has laid on us to accept it. And it's one of the standards being no fluid leaks. It's a 99. Like, that's a challenge. That's a legit challenge. So I had gone through everything, made sure it was all mechanically sound. The other big worry, and really this was the bigger worry, is that I haven't had a parking brake on it. I think we've talked about this. I haven't had a parking brake on the Jeep since I bought it in 2004. So that's a long time with no parking brake. And so I, over time, had pieced together, somebody was parting out a Cherokee, and I pulled the parking brake. I got the center console from somewhere and cleaned that up, because mine had some cutouts in the cup holders, the 2 cup holders that are in a Jeep Cherokee for the locker cables. But when I swapped out the rear axle, I didn't need that cutout anymore. It was just a giant hole in the center console. So figured I'd add that back in. And then with the new axle in the back, which is the Ford 8.8, when I got it, one of the specific things that I asked for was, please leave all the parking brake pieces intact so that I can use them. And so I was able to rig that back up, add some cables and some clamps and cable clamps, and I now have a parking brake that works. And it worked well enough to get me through the inspection process, and it was amazing. No issues. When they did the inspection, they go around with the little check sheet. Okay, we're going to mark every dent, scratch, whatever paint faded thing. And I told the guy, like, when we pulled it in, just put a big X through the whole thing. I got it. There is a dent on every single panel of this Jeep. Every single panel. And I just replaced the window, the front windshield, because Alaska had, I know the Alcan on the previous trip up had destroyed that. So brand new windshield, but dents and scratches and faded paint on every other surface. And sure enough, he still went to inspect every single thing. So there's a gazillion X's and marks on the inspection sheet, but they still accepted it. So great news. And I actually at least got one Instagram message, or somebody had tagged me in their post. They saw the Jeep on the back of a car transport truck back there. So, it still had the 4x4 podcast logo sticker on it. So easily recognizable. The post was kind of angry because they thought that I had sold it, but I clarified. I could see how he would think that, since there was no recent episode being released to describe what all is happening, but it's not sold. It was just moving without me.
I mean, if you would have sold it, you would have at least pulled the stickers off the window. So
you'd think so, yeah, yeah. But so when I picked it up, I had to drive down from here in the desert down to L.A. to pick it up at outside Compton, or I think it was in Compton actually, or Glendale, Glenora.
I think it's Glendale.
No. Anyways, it was near Compton because I didn't even make it a mile away from where I picked it up before the track bar had broken off. Like, I don't know. It was probably just something that was bound to happen. The Heim joint, I had noticed there was starting to be some death wobble if I'd hit a bump while I was driving around Alaska. So I knew something was going on, but it became readily apparent when I hit a Southern California pothole, and the worst case of death wobble I have ever experienced. Terrifying, because the track bar had just completely unseated from the center of the heim joint and was just dangling. So I stopped, let things calm down, collect myself just a little bit, and then I pulled off the road to do an inspection, find out what had happened, and realized what had happened. So I drove extremely slowly. My wife was driving behind me with the four-ways going, and kind of escorted us over to a Home Depot or Lowe's parking lot. And I was hoping that I could just piece it back together with some random hardware until I could get the right part. And that was a complete failure. Was not able to do that. But fortunately, Southern California has tons of off-road shops. So I buzzed over the 15-minute drive to a Full Wheel Parts, and I just got a completely new Rubicon Express track bar. And when I went to put it on, it did not fit. It was too long. So I thought, okay, maybe I just got the wrong one. Went back and got the other version of the Rubicon Express track bar, and it was still too long. So I thought, okay, I'll stick with this heavier duty one, thinking I'll just pull the rod end off of it and just use that. Turns out the Rubicon Express track bar has a left-handed threaded heim joint, and I needed a right-handed thread rod end. So at the end of the day, we ended up just parking it in a parking lot, which was fortunate. We have a listener for the podcast who works for Toyota down here in California at their California campus. So he allowed me to park it at their security guarded parking lot. And then the very next morning, I went over to a race shop, which was recommended to me by Matt Frick from Camp Forlow, who does the Baja tours and expeditions. I called him because I know he's in this area, knows lots of people racing. I said, hey, where should I go to get this taken care of? And now I got to look up the place that I actually went. Menzies Motorsports. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but they get my vote. They hooked me up. I took in my broken part, and they took out their micrometers or the calipers and measured everything, all the specs on my broken piece of crap heim joint, and hooked me up with a brand new one with grade 9 hardware. So it's not something I'll have to worry about for a very long time. And took me, 15 minutes to put back on the Jeep. And it was easy to set it right back to the same length. So I don't have to worry about trying to get a alignment. There it is. So everything drives nice and tight. The Jeep's got no issues. But I figure if the one rod end let go, the other ones are not far behind. So I'm going to go ahead and replace the other heim joints on the control arms so that my front axle just doesn't completely break off and I can actually go and enjoy off-roading without worry of suspension pieces falling apart. So here in the next couple days, I should have my Duraflex joints from Metal Cloak showing up, and that should make the ride much softer, quieter, more comfortable, because metal on metal heim joints are extremely loud and noisy. Every imperfection in the road or trail just is transferred straight through the control arms into that subframe assembly that's on my Jeep, in through the body, directly into your spine. So you trade durability for comfort. But these Duraflex joints look really good. I've got lots of recommendations, and it was a close choice between those and the Johnny joints, the Curry Johnny joints. So you guys got any experience with either one of those joints, the Curry or the Metal Cloak ones?
Not me.
Not personally, no. I've had lots of friends that have run the Curry ones.
Yeah, I mean, the Curry ones have been around forever. But there's some interesting videos, and I know there may be some marketing spend on it. I'm a pretty critical thinker and viewer when I watch that. But, I recommend you check out some of the videos that Metal Cloak puts out on what their Duraflex joints are capable of, because they compare them directly to the Johnny joints and to the Heim joints. In vibration, in flexibility, and just overall wear and serviceability. And in my mind, I think those are just the way I view it. I think the Metal Cloak ones are going to be superior, but time will tell. They've got a warranty on them that's really good. The stipulation is that you have to have the Duraflex joint on both ends of the control arm. So I went ahead and bought 2 full sets for my lower control arms. Went ahead and bought some new bump stops too, since the ones that I have are dry rotted and actually have fallen out, and they're just kind of bouncing around inside the coil springs of the front end. So I'm going to go ahead and replace those. I got some Daystar ones for a pretty good price off Amazon. I think they were like $25 or $30. And that has been the last however many weeks in a nutshell. How long was I talking there? Long time. Holy smokes.
No. Well, talk about broken parts. We were talking about my transmission. I actually found the bracket that holds the transmission in place is actually cracked all the way through, and just a fingernail is holding it on. And so I was wondering why the transmission would move so much when I drove it. And now I know.
Yeah,
I
there's
had
nothing stopping it except for the engine mounts.
Yeah, pretty much the only thing that was holding it in place was the transmission, was the engine mounts, keeping the transmission from moving. So now I know why I broke the rear end a couple years ago, is because that thing was moving around. That's why I broke the rear end. So now
it's amazing how something so small can have such a big difference. Yeah.
So I decided there's a place up in Sacramento, JW's Auto Wreckers. They all have just everything Jeep. It's an entire Jeep place. They have every year Jeep, every kind of, and that's where I actually got some parts for my Jeep. And my trip story is, I decided, okay, I'm going to run up there. I need just, first of all, I got to find a transmission mount because nobody makes that piece of metal. So I either have to have it welded back together or I have to get a new one. So I decided I'm going to go get a new one. So I head up to JW's. And I was going to grab a couple other things while I was there. So I drove the hour and a half to get there, pull in the driveway, and they just happened to be closed the 24th, the 26th, the 27th, and the 28th. That weekend I went up there to get it. So that was my horror story. I drove all the way up there. I'm like, oh, damn it. Drove all the way back to the house. I was steaming the whole time.
I bet. That's frustrating.
So I did look it up from earlier. You were saying we got to look it up, GPS it, how long it takes for us to see each other would be 6 hours.
Oh, that's easy.
That's nothing.
That's easy. And there's lots of good trails between here and there.
Yes, there is.
So, awesome. So I was looking through some of the other things I wanted to talk about that I was using on this trip. And one of the things that I really found to be invaluable, I switched phone service providers. I was off contract with Verizon in Alaska, and AT&T was offering this deal where I actually have service now through Canada and in Mexico, and by all reports, here out in the desert where I'm at, AT&T is the way to go because the Army has invested in their infrastructure. So I went ahead and jumped over to AT&T, but one of the challenges in a lot of places is that there's just no service. So have you guys seen the WeBoost cell phone signal boosters?
Yeah, I saw that you got one of those.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the Drive Sleek. I've seen a lot of their ads, and a couple off-roaders have done reviews on that. But the Drive Sleek model, it's still made by WeBoost, but it supports a single device. And I know that I do not typically go out on adventures by myself. I like to travel with the family. But now with multiple devices, that Drive Sleek would allow me to have good service, or my wife to have good service, but not the other. So they actually have a model called the Drive 4GX, where it has an antenna inside the vehicle that kind of collects the signals from the other cell phones in the vehicle, goes through the signal booster and to an antenna that's on the outside of a vehicle. So it supports multiple users and boosts the signal up to 50 decibels. And so I had to learn, I know a little bit about antennas from experience with CBs and ham radios and stuff like that, but 50 decibel gain is huge. It's huge. And now I can say without a doubt, this thing is amazing. We now have service in areas that nobody else does. So.
Oh, I'm going to have to get one, because when I went to Johnson Valley for King of the Hammers at one time,
yeah,
I had no cell service the whole week, and I have AT&T.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely get service there.
And, yeah, well, see, where they actually hold King of the Hammers, they call it the AT&T bush. You actually have to drive out to this particular bush, and that's the only place you can get AT&T service. Otherwise, you have to be on Verizon.
Yeah.
And that was so the entire time I was there, I couldn't contact anybody in my family. I couldn't, because I was on foot and there was no way to get to that bush. So, because I was, I had the RV and I didn't bring my Jeep, and I walked around all on foot. There was no way I was walking, a mile and a half out to that bush just to call my wife.
Yeah.
I'm still alive. Okay.
Yep.
Maybe, because I still have to walk an hour and a half back to my forget it.
Yeah. Well, so if you're going for just a unit for just one person, I think it was $200. I'll have to look again. But the one that I got that supports multiple users, it's fairly expensive, but the simple fact that once it's installed, I don't have to worry about it. You register it with the cell phone service provider so that it knows what, IMEI number to look for, and just make sure everything still works. The thing is amazing. And it really took me, 15, 20 minutes to install, and that included the time playing with my phone to record a live video while I was doing it, because there's an outside antenna that's magnetic, slaps on. I ran it through the molding into the door. It has the actual booster box, which is just under the seat in the back seat. You connect the power supply, which is just a 12-volt cigarette plug, which is plugged in and out of the way, and then an inside antenna, which I just ran underneath the floor mats into just up inside the upholstery for the seat. So it's the antenna for the inside of the vehicle is pretty centrally located in the vehicle. It's about as close as you could get to the middle of a vehicle. And that was it. I haven't had to think about it ever again. I just have great service all over the place.
Yeah, I watched I think you did an Instagram story.
Yeah, I think it was a live story. I don't know. I'm an Instagram idiot. But
on the install of it. So
yeah. So I highly recommend if you're going to be doing long road trips to far-flung regions that have poor service, you might want to check that out. And if you've got your family with you, nothing keeps a teen or preteen happier than having a way to talk to their friends instead of you. I say that jokingly. It also works great for streaming music. And podcasts. You can download podcasts just like this. It's amazing. That's the real sell. Man, that was a long way to get there.
Here's the thing is we should have tried doing a podcast with it.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's still opportunities. And it's funny. So I did. like I said, this highway through the middle of nowhere from the front gate of my gated community to Barstow has well-known dead spots where you come up and you drop down to the backside of a mountain pass and everything goes to nothing. But I was able to stream and talk to one of our listeners on Instagram. They were doing a live video and we could talk. I never did figure out how to do the two-person live video, so we'll have to try that. But it worked the entire way. It was amazing.
No, you can't. Well, I already looked into it. You can't. Well, eventually, but at this point, you can only do one person on the video chat on your phone.
Oh.
And there's no way to do it. There's no way to do more than two people, one person. Yeah,
Gotcha.
The two people.
Well, as you'll find on episode 130.5 or 130.5, whatever I named it, the cell phone audio quality is not ideal. So we won't do a whole lot of those, but in a pinch, it might be good for a way to cover.
So which
some
Wii
events.
booth did you go with?
So I got the Drive 4GX. And their website's really good. It has a way to kind of pick what your application is. If you're going in a truck or permanently installing an RV, or I see they even have boat boosters. I guess there's not very good cell phone service out on the lake. I've never paid attention to that.
I don't know. I'm too busy fishing.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. My wife was talking us into going down to San Diego so the kids can enjoy the beach here soon. I said, I'm taking a fishing pole if that's okay. She said, deal, as long as we're at the beach. So, winning. But yeah, the Drive 4GX. And looking at their website, I see that is the best seller. And I can tell you, for good reason. Thing's amazing.
Yeah, I'm looking at it on Amazon right now.
Yeah. Well, I think that's it for this show. Did we cover everything? Did we cover anything?
Basically, we just did a whole bunch of catching up.
Yeah. So we will resume. I'll get back to getting some interviews and maybe some in-person interviews because there's tons of places here. I'm going to try and get out to some of these races and talk to folks that are, privateering their way into the race scene or in shops that are helping people build. When I talked to McKinsey's, I talked to them about, hey, do you guys have a shop where I can just bring my vehicle in and have some work done? Because by the looks of things, they do amazing work, but they don't have a shop. They just sell parts to people to build their own vehicles, which is great. That's all I really needed at the time. So that's it for now. Episode 131 is in the bag. And thanks for everybody who has stayed subscribed with us, even though it's been forever. Thanks to those that are still shopping using our link on Amazon, the 4x4podcast.com/Amazon. That reminds us that you're out there and that you want us to continue to produce shows. And as a reminder, we are a part of the 4x4 Radio Network, comprised of the Jeep Talk Show, which is obviously everything Jeep related. It is also including the Center Steer podcast, not the only Land Rover podcast out there anymore, but it certainly is the longest running Land Rover podcast. We've also got the Trail Chasers. Cody has now resumed producing episodes as well. And I'm going to have to go meet up with Cody now so that I think he lives like an hour and a half from me. Maybe 2 hours down in LA area. Anyways, the trails that he's talking about on the Trail Chasers podcast, I am now local to those, so I need to pay attention. He and his brother-in-law co-host that one, and they were talking about coming out to the Calico Hills, the ghost town, and do some off-roading. Unfortunately, the weekend they were talking about doing it is a weekend that I'm working, so they're going to have to reschedule just for me, because that's how I roll. But be sure to check them out. And we're always looking for other interesting shows to add to the network. And I think the newest edition is On the Trail, the On the Trail podcast. So be sure to check them out as well. And that is it. Episode 131. We'll talk to you again later on episode 132. The 4x4 Podcast, episode 131. Crap, the dadgum soundboard fell asleep.
Is that really how we want to start it?
No.
Now you sound like Mark and Mary.
Okay, take 2 or 3.